Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are here for another episode to review some music. Been a great year for albums so far. Lots of big artists dropping, lots more still to come. Um, the big name this week, Post Malone, dropping his country debut that's been teased for many years now. F1 Trillion, out wherever you listen to albums. And we, as we do, are going to go through and review this thing, give you our thoughts. As you can probably see if you're watching the video, J-Mac is back in the building.
We're back. And I'm
We
never going back to Vegas.
He's out of Vegas. He says forever. We'll see.
Done.
Um Also, if you are watching the video, we apologize for the quality.
It's my fault.
Uh we'll see about upgrades in the future.
Yes.
But without further ado, let's get right into the meat of this discussion here. Post Malone, one of my favorite artists of all time, for sure. I'll be the first to admit he's not the most innovative, groundbreaking, not necessarily the best at any one thing, but he does so many things so well, provides such an interesting sound on so many styles that he's just an artist that I've always loved. Really been an interesting evolution of his career for me, going from kind of this SoundCloud rap, hip hop, spacey kind of sound into more pop styles, into more rock styles, and then into this latest iteration of kind of more alternative, acoustic and country style instrumentals. But I feel like if you really know him well as an artist, this isn't really like a new direction for him. There's always kind of been this influence in his music, and for sure seems like something that he was going to do at some point. I will say for me, I didn't have the highest of hopes for this album in terms of sound. Just, I was expecting just to kind of get some fun generic pop tracks out of it, with some country flair. Especially coming off of Austin, which is an album that I enjoyed, but wouldn't necessarily say it was like anywhere near one of my favorites for him. Yeah. But how about for you? How were you feeling about this leading up to it?
I didn't get my hopes up either, but because I saw the track list, because I saw how many country artists he was able to get and just stacked it with as many as he did, it made me a little worried. I just didn't know how it would sound. But then again, I should have known it would have at least sounded good, knowing that he's made songs with people like Ozzy Osbourne and everyone else.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So,
for sure.
But yeah, I'll say that I do think that it did turn out better than Austin did.
Yeah.
I think after Austin, that's where my hopes kind of started dipping a little bit, not thinking that he was like on the decline or anything, but it had its enjoyable moments, but you could tell that it wasn't as great as his other three.
Four.
But four?
Yeah.
I'll just take your word for it.
Yeah.
I can't think. But
anyways.
But yeah, so
right.
Very enjoyable.
Yeah, no, I'll agree with basically everything you said there, and we'll kind of get started off with the production aspect here. I will say he is a guy that brings a lot of interesting production to every project. I feel like there's always been a lot of variety, no matter what the album was. And on this one, I do feel like there's a lot less variety. It is kind of what I was expecting, that generic pop country sound on most tracks. It's definitely not going to like reinvent the country genre or anything like close to that. But it doesn't ever really detract from the album either. Like there's never moments where I'm like, this is terrible production, the guitars sound terrible, the instrumental's distracting. It always kind of just fit the vibe that he was going for. So overall, it wasn't really like, I will say it was one of the worst aspects of the album for me, just because it is so generic, but it was never like a detriment to the album. And I ended up giving that a 6.
Yeah, so I'm just slightly above. I gave it a 7 because they're good. Like, like you were saying, I'm not going to say it's bad production or anything like that. The problem is you have 27 songs, and at least a third of them all sound pretty similar, and that's something. At least that's what I think, and that's just something that you're going to run into. It there's not a
Yeah,
whole
it is what
lot
it's going to be.
difference that you can find within country instrumentals. But I still think they sounded really really well. But yeah, so I give it a 7.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like one of the weaker aspects of it, but again, while it is something that I feel like has always been something he's had a lot of variety, and I don't ever feel like it's been the strongest draw to his music in a lot of cases for me. Generally, what I'm going to a Post Malone album for is the vocal performances and the variety of that sort of thing, as well as the curation choices and just the stylistic direction.
Yeah.
And I do feel like when we're talking about the vocals here, it's generally very exceptional. The last two projects, especially with Austin and 12 Karat Toothache, I feel like have been really washed out, really drowned out with auto-tune, very synthetic, which has its time and place, but for an artist that has such a great rustic, unique vocal inflection and vocal style, I've been kind of missing that from him. And
Yeah.
you get a little bit of that style still on Austin, the last album. But here, I feel like he goes more back to that style. It does still have its polished moments where, it's not like he's not singing with auto-tune on it
Yeah.
on almost every moment, but it's a lot less synthetic, overblown, overproduced. Generally, it's very well done. It's pretty minimal when we're talking about the auto-tune. I really enjoy the vocal performance on it. I will say there are one or two moments that aren't totally polished to me. There's a couple moments where it does sound a little washed out, or where I wish he would have maybe given it another take just to refine that vocal a little bit, because, and it's not because the vocal isn't like hitting the right notes, but it's more of the enunciation and those kinds of things. It just feels a little lazy at certain parts. But overall, I will say it's pretty fun, pretty clean in terms of the sound and the polish on it. I ended up giving the vocals here an 8.
Yeah, so once again, a little higher. I give it a 9.
Wow.
I thought it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
To me, it's one of his best vocal performances all the way throughout an album. The one thing that I can say made me a little excited for this album was hearing that one. I don't remember what the song was, but he sang a country song on some interview or
Yeah.
whatever it
Sure.
was.
He's done a few. Yeah.
Right. So knowing that and then coming into this project, that's kind of what I was expecting and hoping for, and I feel like that's what I got. On top of that, I think with as many features as he has, I think the vocals play a part in that. How well do you sound with each person, with each feature? And I think there was only one where I thought it was a little off, maybe two. But I think he sounded great with everyone. I thought he just felt very in place with everyone.
For sure.
With this style. It just seemed great. I thought he hit the ranges he usually hits, and I just think he did it exceptionally.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a great vocal performance in general. Now, another thing I don't necessarily feel like he's known for is his lyrics. He will come every once in a while with a funny lyric or with very relatable lyrics. But, he's never going to blow you away with like the lyrical content, I don't feel like. And overall, I will say with this album, again, there's not really too many mind-blowing, like funny moments or like great wordplay. Again, that's not necessarily what you come to a Post Malone album for, and even more with like a country album.
Right.
But even in that vein, we're not getting like a Zach Bryan level of introspection or anything like that. Overall, it does rely pretty heavily on those genre stereotypes of country and what a country song's about. But it does occasionally bring a fresh take. One of the tracks that comes to mind when I mention that is on the deluxe version when I think it's called Ain't How It Ends, where he's kind of using that idea of like country stereotypes and being like, I want you back, but like that's not how a country song ends. And like saying, like kind of using that, like turning that thing on its head. And I do think that was kind of funny. Yours is another very, very well written song. I personally, I think it's, when we're talking about writing, one of, if not his best written songs. It's very, very beautiful, very well written. And on that note, I think seeing his progression as an artist, I feel like he's one of the artists from our generation where he was kind of hitting his peak at a pretty young age when I was like at a pretty young age, and I've kind of been able to see every evolution of that career from there. And coming from a guy who's written songs like Feeling Whitney or Stay early in his career to kind of talk about hardships and being an immature kid and making mistakes and substance problems and all of that and being in the wrong place at the wrong time, to writing a song like yours is super, super cool for me as a big fan of his to hear. So that one was one I really enjoyed. I did give the lyrics a 6. I do feel like it relies really heavily on those stereotypes when I wish he would have branched out a little bit more. On a country album, you're gonna get that inevitably, but a little more branching out, I feel like could have benefited the project.
So this is where we'll differ very heavily. The lyrics were probably one of my favorite parts of this album.
Wow.
I gave it a 9.
Wow.
And here's the reasoning, because with different genres, I can't think lyrical rap.
Sure.
Even though that's what
you go to.
It's in my head, I can't. Especially for a country album. So what do I try to get out of a country album? I'm looking for the storytelling. How vivid of a picture can I get in my head? Can I follow along through the entire song? Descriptive words are really big. Things of that nature.
Yeah.
And I feel like, yes, it does hit the country stereotypes, which I kind of expected.
Yeah.
But like what you said, yours, it was beautiful images in my head. Another one that I think I was just able to picture really well was Dead at the Honky Tonk.
Yep.
Or even, I don't remember the title of the name, but the one with Hardy about hiding the gun.
Hide My Gun.
Yeah. So it's things like that where I felt like throughout the album, I was just always able to picture something in my head, kind of follow along where he was at.
Yeah.
And so that's why I have such high praise for the lyrics on this one. Because, granted, something like Beer Bongs and Bentleys, I think the lyrics are pretty solid on that one, but they're going to be for completely different reasons.
Yeah.
So, but I loved the lyrics on this one.
Wow, very impressive.
Yeah.
Not what I expected you to rate that one as. Let's move on here, talking about the theme and the concept of this one overall. When we're talking about the concept on this, I will say I do kind of consider it a concept album in a way, because he's not a country artist, but he's coming in with a full-fledged country project. And I do think a big part of that is relying very heavily on those country stereotypes that we've been talking about, but very intentionally so, not because it's what he feels like he's relying on. Even if you look at the title of the album, like F1 Trillion, and then the deluxe version being called Long Bed F1 Trillion, like, talking about those kind of truck stereotypes of country, that I do kind of consider that a concept, very loosely so. But like I've said, this has kind of been something he's forever hinted at, talked about, and had influence of in his music. So I do also think it's essentially just an album that he wanted to make for his own enjoyment, for the enjoyment of fans of his that are kind of more of those hardcore fans that have felt those influences in his music and appreciated those influences. Overall, it's pretty good. I don't think it really does anything to set it apart from other similar projects. Very closely related in my mind is that Beyonce project from earlier in the year, because that is a very heavy concept album when we're talking about country influence and country roots and how that's influenced artists over their careers. And when we're looking at the artistry of the concept, that Beyonce one blows this one out of the water. And when we're talking about that kind of level, but when we're looking at just the fun aspect of the songs, it's a super fun album. It is that thing where it's just like, you want to go boating, you want to go camping, and just throw this one on shuffle. And so in that regard, I do enjoy that a lot. But it was a 6 for me when we're talking about the theme and concept, just because it's not going to do anything to push any boundaries,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. So I pretty close again. I gave it a 7, just because this one was pretty easy to kind of find some sort of a concept. It was literally just, I want to make a country album.
Yeah.
This is what I've been talking about, like you were saying. And he just made it, like you said, so much fun. Like, you could tell he has a passion within this genre. You could tell he was just so excited to get all of these top-notch country artists to do an album with him, and to get so many on an album is impressive. But like you said, it doesn't really push any boundaries.
Yeah.
It's, if you want to call it a concept, like you said, very, very loose. But I just think he wanted to have a good time with this one.
100%.
So,
Yeah, and you've mentioned a couple times now when we're talking about the features, literally bringing together today's country Avengers for the most part, like almost every big name you can think of right now, from Tim McGraw to Luke Combs to Hardy, Ernest, Morgan Wallen, Lainey Wilson, and then even when we're talking a little bit more of the classic sound, we've got like Hank Williams Jr., Dolly Parton, and you know, Tim McGraw, Brad Paisley, also kind of in that regard. Super, super great aspect of this album for a couple reasons for me. I feel like it adds a lot of credibility to the album, which is something that's hard when you're going to do something genre bending like this. And you see this kind of like with an artist like Beyonce as well. And I just keep bringing her up because it is kind of that similar idea to go from an R&B style to this country style. But getting someone like a Hank Williams or a Dolly Parton just adds that level of credibility. Like, it's not like I'm just here to leech the culture or to, you know, bring fans that aren't really fans of this genre to, you know, get sales out of them because I can't really think of anything original, which some artists do. Even if you're looking at someone like a Machine Gun Kelly, who's had their fair share of problems with artists from rock and roll and metal saying he's not really one of ours.
right.
I don't really feel like you're getting that sense from Post Malone with this country album, especially when so many artists are willing to work with him and have such high praise for him outside of just their performances here.
Right.
It does also add a lot of great variety and great performances to the right amount of songs. Especially if you're looking at the deluxe, there's a bit more where he's doing solo stuff. So I don't feel like they're overbearing or overstaying their welcome. It is just a lot of fun. I love the variety they add. It does appear a little safe in a lot of regards when you're going with a Morgan Wallen, when you're going with an Ernest or a Jelly Roll. Pretty safe picks for a Post Malone album. I don't really mind that, but it would be cool to hear him go a little more out there with maybe like a Zach Bryan or someone who's a little more of a different style, but I think they could do something cool together.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I gave it a 9 just because it would have been interesting to hear a little more of that reach in terms of this isn't kind of a perfect matchup in your head, but I can do something great with it, like an Ozzy Osbourne kind of track that he's proven he can do. So ultimately, I gave the features a 9.
Yeah. So you finally beat me on higher or lower here. I gave it an 8, mainly because there were the two features I didn't feel were good, whether it was just the actual feature, the entire song, or whatever, was Dolly Parton and Chris Stapleton.
Okay.
Anyways, and then I just wish that instead of putting basically all of his solo stuff on the deluxe, I wish he kind of would have put maybe one
Broken
or
it up
two,
a little.
right?
Yeah.
Maybe take some of those features, put it on the deluxe instead. Granted, I just straight up listen to the deluxe, so I don't. It's not too big of a worry for me or a complaint, but you know, if you're just listening to the straight up album, that's at least one thing I would point out. But still, I gave it an 8.
Yeah, I'll agree with your second bit there, but I'm not going to jump on this Chris Stapleton, Dolly Parton slander. That's outrageous. Let's move on before a fight ensues and talk about the enjoyment and replay value overall here as a whole. For me, I kind of mentioned earlier, this is one of those albums that I can and will and really am excited to just hit shuffle on the album, not have it pop up in a playlist or just in whenever I'm listening, and really can enjoy whatever comes on. There is a good amount of variety in terms of sound. There isn't a whole lot of slow stuff. It's just a lot of upbeat, fun stuff. Um, and I will say the kind of reason that it does take a hit here for me a little bit is that time kind of might prove that it doesn't have a lot of staying power. I could very well see this as an album in a year or two or three where I'm only coming to one or two tracks during those summertime, kind of like, when you're out camping or boating or on a road trip or whatever.
Yeah.
So, as of right now, it does feel like an album that I'll hit shuffle and just enjoy whatever comes on whenever it comes on. That might not be true in 6 months or a year from now. And again, in just overall in the replay value and enjoyment, it's not going to be something that pushes the genre or, is groundbreaking necessarily. It does feel very similar to what Morgan Wallen did last year, although I think the Morgan Wallen project was a bit stronger in terms of the performance. But yeah, overall, an album I really enjoyed. I ended up giving the replay a 7.
Yeah, I agree. I gave it a 7, mainly because I'm still I enjoy country. It's not my favorite, but it's definitely not my least. I'll
Yeah.
throw on, if I'm really in the mood, I'll really get down with some country.
Yeah.
So that's when some of these songs will pop up. Plus, it's Post Malone. He just knows how to make a genre really fun. But because I straight up listened to the deluxe, it's 27 songs long.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of these songs I'm not going to come back to because of maybe I think this one sounds like this one and I enjoyed this one better, or
Sure.
the lyrics were stronger here. I had a lot more fun with this one. So there's a lot of pick and choose, but still giving it a 7, not bad in the slightest. So
Yeah, absolutely. Overall, this album came out to a 7 out of 10 for me, pretty just even 7 out of 10. And that feels pretty accurate. Where it's sitting right now is around, I have a pretty loose top 10 on the year right now. And that 10 spot is really the only one that I feel like is in question of what's going to go there right now. And it's kind of hovering in the same enjoyment level as the rest of the albums that are in that spot for that argument right now. So I say that just to say that I'm fairly sure that it's not going to make that end of the year list because we're just over halfway over and there's already 9 albums that I'm pretty confident that I have a lot more respect for on the year. But it is really enjoyable. Is it the best country album? No. There's a handful of country albums this year that I think are a lot better, and there's a handful of pop albums that I also think are a lot better than this one this year. But like I said before, I don't really foresee this being an album that I come to for being like this groundbreaking, innovative country project that's so genre bending and unique. It's just going to be one of those albums that's it's fun, it's playable music, and I enjoy coming back to it for that. So
yeah. So mine came out to about a 7.5. I'm on board with what you're saying. It's probably where I'd keep it. I still have no idea about my top 10.
yeah.
But I feel like if I put this in my top 10 and who did you send? Zach Bryan released an album? Yeah, I feel like if Post Malone's in there and Zach Bryan's not, I feel like words will be said.
The country people will eat you.
Yeah, I'll die.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if I would have a problem with that because it is so fun and playable that it's if that's what you want, then cool. The country heads are going to eat you alive if you say that.
Maybe I'll do it just to make some people upset.
Yeah.
I like that. No, but Mine might be even more loose, as in it's probably not a thing still.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It might make it. It might not.
Yeah, we'll see where it
We'll
ends up.
see.
For sure. Let's get into a few specifics on the track listing here, talking about the best, worst, and most underrated. For me, handily, the best song is Yours. I think it, like I said, it is one of his best written songs, if not his best written song ever. I won't say it's the best song ever because there's some great performances he has across his catalog. But in terms of writing specific, it's right up there among the very best. Worst is a really hard one for me to pick because while there are a few tiers of songs on this album, from fantastic to kind of could take it or leave it, I don't feel like one kind of stands out to me as the worst. I put Hey Mercedes.
Really?
Not because it's a bad song. I really actually would love to hit shuffle and have that one come
Yeah.
on. It's really fun to listen
It's a
to.
good one.
It's purely because I personally have this thing with like,
Mercedes.
no, with naming a song after a person just because it rhymes.
That's fair.
You know, like when we're talking about Taylor Swift, Hey Steven, Drake is a terrible culprit of this. Like, Drake, I don't know who your third grade, classmate is that you're referencing. Like, Jimmy was like, I don't know. You're just putting them in it because it rhymes. It's not because. So, anyways, it's just that little grievance I have. But it is a really fun song. I do enjoy listening to it. For me, again, the most underrated is a hard one because there are a few that I feel like I could give this to. Wrong Ones with Tim McGraw, while it is getting a good amount of love on the stream numbers, it's so good. I feel like to me, it's the second best song on the album, but it's not getting the second most streams on the album. Fallen in Love and Dead the Honky Tonk off of the deluxe are also both fantastic. When we got to that break into the deluxe portion, I was like, holy crap, like this is like the country.
Yeah.
This is the real country part of the album. We're going from pop country fun stuff to like, this is actually great music here. So those two I think were both fantastic as well.
Yeah. So
I know you're going to slander Dolly Parton right now, and I'll let you say it, but I'm not going to let you get away with it.
No, not right now. We're gonna go with best. So I was gonna put Yours at best, but I didn't, and there's reasoning.
Sure.
So for the best, I put What Don't Belong to Me. I thought that was another one that great picture in my mind, and I thought the chorus was really catchy. I liked the wordplay, saying things like I don't remember any of the lyrics, so that was a terrible time to say that I had. Anyways, I love that song. I thought, obviously, thought it was the best.
Yeah.
The worst.
Yeah.
I just didn't like the sound of it, but I have two, and it's with the people that I said earlier. So Have the Heart and California Sober. I just didn't enjoy the songs. I don't know what you want me to say.
I guess music's subjective. We'll say that. We'll say that and move on.
I think I didn't like California Sober more than I didn't like Have the Heart.
All right.
But
between those two, I can respect that pick.
Yeah.
From what I see on social media, a lot of people might be angry at that, though. That's a lot of people's favorite song.
Really?
Well, California Sober is like a lot of people's favorite song. I will agree with you. I think Have the Heart is better.
Yeah.
Arguing for those two being the worst is crazy to me. But if you're going to say California Sober is worse, I'll agree with that statement between those two songs.
It's not even like Strays or like, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but like.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're just.
It's all good. It's all good.
Most underrated. I also have two. I think I put Yours at underrated just because of how low it is in the album. There are a lot of great songs before that one. So to see it kind of not get as much respect, I could see that. I don't follow the streaming numbers or anything
Yeah.
like you have. So I don't even know where it sits now, but that's just kind of where my head was at. And then I had to throw this one in just because to me this was the most fun song, and it's Mexico.
Okay. That
Very
one was fun.
vibey.
Yeah.
I was just having a great time with
Yeah.
it. So I threw that in as underrated as well. So
For sure. Yeah, I think we hit all the points here. It is a fun album. If that's the kind of thing that you like for just fun, enjoyable music, it is one that's going to be not for a lot of people. I do feel like,
yeah,
especially in the hip hop community, there's going to be a lot of critics and reviewers that are going to have a lot of gripes with it, just because it's not their genre, and they do feel like that tends to be the path for a lot of quote unquote failed white rappers to make country when your rap career doesn't pan out.
yeah,
I think that's a crazy argument. He's one of the best streaming rappers of all time, but that's neither really here nor there. I do feel like it's overall it's an enjoyable album,
yeah,
which I was pleasantly surprised with.
yeah.
I didn't know how I was going to come away feeling from it.
Turned out much better than I thought it was going to. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Any final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
No.
I'm going to make you apologize to Chris Stapleton and Dolly Parton.
No, it won't happen. I'll apologize to Dolly Parton
Okay.
because
As long as you put some respect on their names.
okay, look. I respect them as artists. I respect all artists as artists.
Yeah.
I'm not in their position.
It's not for you.
Right.
Okay.
Just the Dolly Parton one, it was just quite literally the sound of the song. It
Okay.
just not my sound.
Yeah.
Chris Stapleton. Sorry. But
Well,
I'm not.
Okay.
Anyways.
The end.
Goodbye.